Now it is my honor to present our next panelist, Mr. Santiago Velasquez, founder of Eyesight and Halo Australia. Mr. Velasquez, inspired by his vision impairment, has applied his expertise in electrical engineering expertise to invent solutions to make this world more inclusive. He was a first blind electrical engineering student in the Southern Hemisphere. Now at 23 years old, he is a founder of two companies, Eyesight and Halo, which have done extraordinary work toward solving accessibility issues in business, education, employment, and navigation. Mr. Velasquez, you have the floor, please.
Morning, distinguished guests, delegates of states parties, and civil society representatives. It is an honor to speak to you and represent Australia at the United Nations today. What would you think if I were to ask you to describe an item I was holding in my hand with your eyes closed? What would you think if I were to ask you to listen to my presentation on mute? How about hailing a bus that you could not see approaching? I could continue with hypotheticals, but they are only hypotheticals if you are able and consider that by the world. Let's take one of the affirmation scenarios further. If we were to place you in a metropolis and were to ask you to hail a bus without seeing it, some of you might take the challenge, but the majority will not. Those who do take that challenge will feel frustrated at some point throughout the experience. And this is why inclusive spaces are so important. Because the rules of society, anybody who's able, who takes that challenge, will be considered disabled, even if it's just for a short period of time. Inclusion is a collective effort, and there are three things that I think we ought to remember to make it a fact of life. Inclusiveness does not exist. Don't be inclusive just because it is the right thing to do. And inclusion is only hard if you make it hard. Those three aforementioned points go against everything that we are trying to do regarding inclusion around the world. But sometimes we have to break things before we can fix them. And believe me, this is one of those times. Inclusivity does not exist. It is just a dream and nothing else. Inclusion is only as powerful as the condition in question. As easy as that condition is to understand by the general population, as admirable as the thought leaders of that condition are, and as powerful as the organizations who represent those conditions are. If you're vision impaired like myself, you know that audio, large print, braille, and bright colors are not the only ways of making spaces accessible. However, that is the approach that everybody who designs on our behalf takes. And this occurs for every disability under the sun, and even those that are yet to be classified. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying to mean that inclusiveness is impossible. In the contrary, it's easy, but we just need to be in the same page. The second point, don't be inclusive just because it is the right thing to do, is critical. That state of feel good does not last forever. We all know what the right thing to do is, and yet we don't always do it. Don't litter, be kind to others, don't talk behind others' backs, etc. Subconsciously or consciously, we all break those rules. So we should not kid ourselves into believing that we can take that same approach with inclusion. There are many reasons why we need to have inclusivity and inclusive spaces, but here are just two. One, it helps everybody around the world. And two, it makes financial sense for both countries and individuals all around the world. The third point, Inclusion is only hard if we make it hard. Anything can be hard, but it can also become easy. Our battleground, the world, is the biggest inaccessible space there is. I'm only disabled because the sighted world says so. Nothing else. But I'm not the only one. We are disabled in the eyes, the ears, the minds of our able-bodied peers. Not for anything else. We need to understand that we need to fail. And we need to learn from those mistakes, just as the sighted world, the non-impaired world, is able to do so. Here in Australia, I've been fortunate to utilize my electrical engineering degree to find and start 2 companies that are tackling accessibility issues. One of them being hailing buses, which I posed as an example earlier on. If you cannot see a bus approaching, how are you supposed to hail it? A lot of the times you get left behind, and we're fortunate that because of the support we have received, we're doing a trial in Sydney. But the idea behind this solution and others is not only to improve the accessibility for people who have a vision impairment, but also for others. Just because somebody with a disability wants to do something that has never been done by somebody with that condition, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't let them. I have driven a car. I have scuba dived. I have gone rock climbing. I have even piloted a plane, believe it or not. And from all those experiences, I have grown as a person, and I have grown to realize that we're not defined by our disability. We rely on the kindness of strangers to make our world accessible. That's only the first step, and there is so much more. So don't idealize thought leaders of our specific condition, because there are billions of people around the world that just want to live their regular lives. If you don't know, just ask. That's all you need to do. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Velasquez, for your inspiring presentation.